upon us. That's a lot quicker than I expected it to be, but that means it's good. It's keeping us up on our toes, and it's a good cadence for us all to work together. This is week 2, so if we can go to the next slide, just for a reminder, we are recording these sessions for no other reason than we will learn how to do better. And also you can request these if you want to go back, and you can have a look at these sessions to kind of catch up. We keep our videos on if possible, just to see your friendly faces. It's always far more relatable if we can see one another. Hopefully one of these days we'll do this in person. So I think we're going to have to select one of the wonderful locations that you're representing to visit. Although London today is quite sunny, but I wouldn't recommend that as the next in-person setup, purely because it is not very predictable. And then mute yourself as you are, as we're presenting, but we will give chances for you to unmute yourself as there are questions. So today's agenda, personally, I'm very excited about this one. Like any person, and as a parent myself, I'm not allowed to have favorites. So I'm not allowed to have favorite people to work with either. But today you hear some of the favorite use cases and organizations. Well, some of my favorite anyway. There are many, but you'll hear from 3 organizations that are truly inspirational, not just in terms of the work that they are doing, but also the people they are and how far they've come, and you'll learn a lot from them. So I think that's a really exciting session. Then you will meet Manish, which is one of our fantastic team members. We didn't color code on purpose, but I see that actually it works really well. And Manish is going to take you through Turn. He is one of the core members at Turn, and he is an absolute product guru. For those who've dealt with the support channel, you're most likely speaking to Manish as well. So he'll be taking us through how to get started on Turn, and also how to get the best as a community out of Turn. Then we'll go through the weekly assignment stuff, the boring admin things, and hopefully we should wrap up by an hour. So talking of which, if we go on to the next one. So last week, just a quick recap. Last week we got started. There was some homework that was shared. The one was in particular was just to start on your project plan. There was a good question from the, now I can't remember which team. I think it was the Tazik team. The project plan doesn't have a particular deadline. It's purely for you to work on. It's a guide for you to use it, don't use it. We recommend, of course, you use it because it will help you define your project and the program you're working on. And then there was also the comms bit, but I'm not going to go into too much that today. Today is about getting inspired and just sitting back and really taking in the knowledge that will be shared with you over the next hour or so. So the first one that is going to share is Jonathan Mackay. I've worked with Jonathan for many years. He is a fantastic person and inspiration to us all. And he's currently talking to us from Nairobi. He's normally based in New York, South African by birth. But Jonathan, share with us about Same and the journey you've been on.
Hi, everyone. I just want to check. Can you hear me okay? Is the sound coming through? Fantastic. You can call me Jono. That's a little bit easier. And one of the things I just wanted to let you all know before I get started is that Same didn't really exist as an organization prior to the Accelerator. So it's because of the Accelerator that I find myself in this amazing position of being the executive director of a new organization. And I think that might be quite different from many of the other speakers today, and different from your own experiences. And I would suggest, though, and I'll get to this later when I talk about the lessons learned, that there are aspects of building an organization around a bot that are probably relevant to your long-term plans for your bots, or that will be relevant, I think, if your bots have a long and healthy lifespan. With that caveat done, let's go. So Same, the organization I'm here representing, exists because navigating adolescence is challenging for anyone. but it's especially difficult for young people who are questioning their sexual orientation and gender identity and don't feel that they have anyone that they can talk to, because they live in places, because they live in communities where sexual and gender differences and identities are very sensitive, touchy subjects. They're very difficult to tackle. Next slide, please. And what young people who do question their sexual identity or gender identity find, because of the fact that these are such sensitive topics, is that at a time in their life when they could most deal with support, where they could most benefit from someone providing them with some guidance, they often have nowhere to turn. And this is a personal experience of my own, and a personal experience of many of the people on the same team that we bring to our work. That experience of feeling really isolated and alone and struggling to navigate the world, turning to the internet a lot of the time to try and find answers, and finding content that doesn't really speak to your lived experience at all. Next slide, please. One of the reasons why for so many young people, they're not able to access content that is relevant to their lives is that in over 70 countries across the world, consensual and private same-sex activity and forms of gender expression are criminalized. This is true for millions and millions of young people all over the world. And one of the reasons why they don't have anywhere to turn, because if they did turn to someone and talk about even just questions that they had about sexual orientation and gender identity, they would be at risk of exposure and potentially even at risk of physical violence. Next slide, please. One of the things that is shocking, though, is that even in countries where legal protections do exist, LGBTQ plus youth suffer from mental health challenges like depression, stress, and anxiety at exponentially higher rates than their peers. As you can see on this slide, LGBTQ plus youth in the USA are 5 times more likely to attempt suicide. South Africa, where I'm from, young LGBTQ plus people suffer from depression at 4 times the rate of their peers. And I know we have someone on the call from Indonesia today. In places like Nigeria and Indonesia, where religion plays a much more central role in many people's lives, this could be even more difficult for young people who are trying to understand what their identity means for their religion and how to navigate the tensions that exist between what their family and community expects of them and what they feel inside. Next slide, please. So we came to the Accelerator with this problem, confident that there must be some way that we could use the fact that WhatsApp is used more or less all over the world by young people to provide them with access to safe, affirming content and support that they couldn't find in their communities. And we have created a bot, we think of it as our first product, that provides young people with a safe space to express their differences. And our aim isn't to help them become any particular identity, but to help them understand what the options are, to help them make sense of their feelings and to let them decide. One of the things we don't want to do is dictate to young people what it means to be different or what it means to be L, G, B, T, or Q, or the plus. We want to provide a safe space for them to figure that out. Next slide, please. We've assembled a team of people who have very diverse experiences. And when we built the bot, when we came together for the Accelerator, we were all doing this on a voluntary basis. And one of the things that I'd suggest is that if you have enough passion and commitment behind the bot, you can find a way to get something built with very little resources. Next slide, please. One of the things which I think distinguishes the team from many other teams is that we have lived experience. More than 80% of the team have lived experiences of dealing with mental health challenges. We are members of the LGBTQ plus community. We are working with youth advisory panels, so young people in the countries where we work, to try and make sure that their voices are reflected in the content that we're creating. Next slide, please. Our bot offers access to information, the option to chat with experts, the option to share inspiration. One of the things which we want to recognize is that young people often have amazing solutions to offer themselves. And so there's the option for young people to offer advice to others. We have resources that young people can connect to, service directories that have been vetted by our team. And we have tools that allow young people to practice self-care to manage their mental health. At the core of the bot is an 8-session cognitive behavioral therapy course that's been based on an intervention that was developed in North America and that in multiple randomized control trials has been shown to improve the mental well-being of young people. And now we're adapting it so that it can be delivered through the bot. So we're trying to start where the evidence is really strong and move on from there. Next slide, please. Yeah. Our aim is to put our service, our solution, within reach of 50 million LGBTQ plus youth who live in countries with discriminatory laws and social norms over the next 5 years. To do that, well, there's quite a challenge ahead of us. Next slide, please. We'll flash up this slide maybe a little bit later as well during the questions. This is just a little bit of a demo. It's not the final bot, but it's one that's safe for you to interact with. You can't mess this one up. So if you have a moment, scan the QR code. But we'll come back to that a little bit later. Next slide, please. The successes that we've had in 2021 since we were part of the Accelerator have largely been on the fundraising side. And this is because we didn't come to the Accelerator with an organization. And one of the things which we found, and this is part of the lessons, thank you for your question, Nitin, MedPiper, we'll get to that one. One of the things which we found is we really had to work hard to secure the resources to actually run the bot on an ongoing basis and make it sustainable. Fortunately, we've had some pretty good luck on the fundraising side of things, but now we need to make sure that it connects to the actual real life impact. To do that, next slide, we have a roadmap that we've developed. So we've been running a beta test in Nigeria, Malaysia, India, and the Philippines, just to make sure that everything is technically working. We're able to get people onto the bot. We're able to navigate, get them through the onboarding, through the CBT modules. We're looking at with very small numbers of users, tiny amounts, but 25% of the users that we've managed to recruit through digital advertising have said that they are members of the LGBTQ plus community, which gives us some confidence that our targeting is not doing too badly, considering there isn't a way that you can easily identify someone who's questioning their sexual orientation using Facebook's ad manager. But we're still, so 25% we're happy with, and 68% of the users who come through our bot are having a meaningful experience. They're engaging with enough of the content to actually expect that where we could expect to see some changes in their knowledge, their attitudes, or their behaviors. Next, we want to be running that test at scale in South Africa. Then we want to replicate in Zimbabwe and Indonesia. Following that, we want to run an efficacy test that actually proves, probably using some kind of RCT, that it's all working before we try and scale. Next slide, please. I'm pretty sure I'm over time. Lesson to share with you, and I wish I could go back in time and change things up, because done is definitely better than perfect. When I look at where we are a year from now, I have to say I'm frustrated sometimes by the lack of progress, frustrated that we haven't done more. And I think that's a lot of the time because we really want to do things well. And I think we haven't learned nearly as much as we should have in the time that we've had. And if I would launch a much jankier, way more horrible version of the bot much earlier if I could go back in time. Next slide. One of the things we learned is trying to manage multiple languages in the same country even. This is hard when you're trying to develop a bot that iterates, where you're iterating when you're changing. So virtually every week, we're having like a new idea for a new feature that we could add to the bot. And when we're adding that new feature, we have to go back and change across multiple languages, and we're not using auto translators either. Unfortunately for us, we're not confident in the translations. So this has just been like really hard to manage the workflows, where you're trying to tweak something and be nimble and flexible in response to what you're learning, and at the same time manage these multiple languages. Next slide. And as I said before, it doesn't in our experience, it doesn't really take that long to build a bot. You can build a bot pretty quickly, but to make sure that you have the support to keep the bot going in the long run, that's hard. And I actually have spoken to other organizations who are part of the Accelerator who've abandoned their bot now because they didn't have dedicated funding or resources allocated prior to the Accelerator, and it wasn't a strategic priority for them. And I think it's perfectly fine to treat the Accelerator like an experiment. But if there is any ambition to take what you build beyond the Accelerator into the future, thinking about the organizational infrastructure around the bot, I would say that's super important. Next slide, and I think that's probably the last slide.
Yeah, that's the last slide. I can go back to the QR code if you want.
Thanks. Okay, so some of the questions, I saw that there was a measure of success for the bot. So for we're measuring for some of our lighter touch content, changes in knowledge around mental health, gender identity and sexual orientation, changes in attitudes towards mental health. So do people feel more confident in their ability to manage their mental health? These are measured through surveys that we're sending to users as they consume the content. We've also adapted standardized clinical tools that are used to measure mental health pathologies like depression and anxiety disorders. There are some fairly standard questions that any clinician would ask someone to understand if they are suffering from depression. And we are serving those surveys to users before and after they consume the content to try and understand whether or not there is a shift in the severity of their symptoms that could be attributed to our work. But I can easily share more information around our thinking around that. One of the things which we haven't been doing so far is actually really incentivizing users to take those surveys. The bulk of our work to date has just been trying to make sure that the bot is sticky and engaging, or as engaging as it needs to be in order for us to have any hope that we could actually shift mental health outcomes. Sasha, one of the things which we're trying to do to make it scalable, and this is where like running in multiple countries is so important to us. I think it becomes there are economies of scale that we can unlock, and I'm going to find a way to balance this with all the languages we want to operate in. And this may force us to operate in languages that are really, really widely spoken across the world. But I think that the more countries you operate in, the more cost effective the service becomes, and the lower the unit price for each individual affected by the intervention becomes. And I hope that that unit price gets cheap enough that it becomes something that is sustainable to fund in the long run. And we are relying on a growing pool of donors who are interested in mental health outcomes. And in the future, through RCTs, we hope to be able to demonstrate that there are connections between improved mental health and improved other physical health outcomes and improved economic empowerment and education outcomes. How do you get people to coming back to the bottom over and over? So far, we're not. So like repeat engagement is a real challenge, and we're actually exploring what some psychologists call single session interventions as an alternative to the 8-session CBT course that that we've developed. Do we have a UX designer? So I've been serving as the UX designer. So I'd say yes, we did have a UX designer on the team, not necessarily the most brilliant one, but I'd say it's an important part of the team for us, definitely.
Jonathan, thank you. Wow. I mean, I've learned something new today even. So just it is so wonderful to have you, and thanks for sharing. I'm sure everyone else is kind of taking notes. We will be sharing this recording afterwards again, so if you want to watch it again, and we will be sharing the deck in our general guide, so you can go back, digest it, think about it. If you want to get in touch with Jonathan, we can also do that for you. But again, thank you very much. We appreciate, and safe travels in Nairobi. Our next use case is from South Africa, Gavin Wheel, who's the founder and CEO of Digify, and he's going to be talking about their chatbot, Lesedi, and what wonderful scale they've achieved in South Africa. So, Gavin, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good day to you all, whatever time of day it is. I'm Gavin. I'm the founder of Digify Africa, and I guess we're the opposite of Jono in some ways, because we've been around for donkey's years, and we built this chatbot as an organization. I've known Jono for a while as well, but as an organization, we've been around for a long time, and the chatbots have come into our world in a very interesting way in the last couple of years. Next slide, please. So our organizational mission is to try and help young people get access to livelihoods and grow businesses through digital skills in the digital economy. And so a big focus of what we do is on unemployed young people. I'm sure in many of the places that you all work, you'll have similar issues around youth unemployment. And we have these incredible figures of millions and millions of young people who are not in education, employment, and training. Not only that, but as the world moves towards e-learning, accelerated by COVID, these young people are often kind of left further behind because of the digital divide and the lack of access to data and devices, which is a big problem in South Africa and in many parts of the continent. So we wanted to make sure these guys are not left behind. So what we wanted to build was an actual education program that could be delivered via WhatsApp. So Lesedi is a personal learning coach that delivers digital skills directly to users via WhatsApp. It's as simple as that. Next slide, please. So it's focused on an 18 to 35-year-old audience, which is the kind of broad definition of youth in South Africa. We've started with South Africa, but we aim to target the whole continent. And Lesedi itself focuses on digital literacy skills. So really very basic kind of early users of the internet. How can you use the internet to improve your life? And then ultimately building out content towards more advanced skills that can link to work opportunities. So the bot itself, we've tried to push the user experience of WhatsApp as much as we can to really try and replicate an e-learning experience. So we've built quiz modules and assessments. We've added elements of gamification with leaderboards and certificates and badges. And really just tried to make it as immersive as possible, because we don't want our users leaving the WhatsApp environment because we're trying to keep it as affordable as possible. And then also backed up by, the analytics to kind of understand the users and how they're learning, so we can get a sense of the depth of learning. Next slide, please. So we'll come back to this one, but this is how you can play around with Lesedi. We'll come back to that at the end. So in summary, yeah, it's a highly interactive learning journey that is incentivized. And what we want this to become and what we're working on is it's not just delivering learning content, that it will be a kind of learning management system for organizations where they can onboard and manage their users, and communicate with them and introduce a range of content to them. And really, we want it to be a channel for education to help this kind of revolutionization of education in Africa for low-income learners, where we try and make it as accessible, because it's proving to be a very divisive problem right now, and hopefully change lives along the way. So our success so far, we have been quite surprised at the levels of uptake, and we managed to onboard over 300,000 users, sending a lot of messages, which caused us some technical problems along the way, and 32 years worth of educational content consumed so far, 155,000 full courses completed on the bot, and averaging at 60,000 monthly active users. And that's with Lesedi and another bot we launched since, called Kito, which is kind of similar to Lesedi, but with different content over the last 12 months. So we've had really great engagement. And I think in terms of, some of the learnings, I think what we've learned in a positive sense is that you can do education on WhatsApp. I think a lot of people were very skeptical about that. Why would people want to learn on WhatsApp? And I think particularly people who live in the West don't quite understand why someone would want to learn on WhatsApp. I think we've proven that it can be effective. And also that you can do a lot more with the WhatsApp user experience than you might expect. It's good to experiment and take some risks with it and try things out. The challenge is, I think coming to one of the earlier questions we had of getting people to visit your bot or come back to your bot, I think you've got to have a good sense of your marketing mix and how you're going to market the bot in a consistent and, a strong and consistent way. Scale, we all want scale, but what we discovered is that things can break at scale, and you have to be very aware of your cost, your scale of costs as well as things scale and more messages are sent, and some of the third-party providers, how they can handle that scale. So that's one thing to be aware of. And I think it was mentioned before, but building user feedback is really essential. In some of the earlier stages, when we were getting huge traffic on our bots, we weren't entirely sure why or how it was happening. So, hopefully we've fixed that now, but that was a bit of a rookie error, that we didn't quite have the user feedback mechanisms to know where these users were coming from. Looking ahead, so we're now on track and aiming to train 1 million learners by the end of 2024 via the bots. We've got a partnership with the South African Department of Basic Education to help us get there. We really want to push the depth of the learning you can do on bots. So beyond kind of basic skills and short courses, to going to more advanced skills and things that can be useful in terms of your employability. And then the monitoring and evaluation for us, trying to do education on chatbots this piece is very important. And I think we've still got a journey to go on here to prove, and I think prove to the wider world and the education sector, the effectiveness of learning and to demonstrate the evidence that it's a valuable learning experience for the user. And then my quick lesson and advice and tip. I think in terms of the big lesson is you can unlock scale, and we believe it was because we had the right content targeted at the right audience, very simply. And that managed to almost get some kind of viral scale of people picking up on the bot, and gathered its own momentum. The advice, just going back to what I said before, is making sure there's user feedback mechanisms wherever you can to make sure you're understanding your users, where they're coming from, how they're feeling about the experience. And my tip is make sure you have a marketing plan from the beginning, because you could build the most amazing bot and no one's on there, which would be a great shame. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Gavin. Wow, I mean, it's really good to kind of have you and Jono next to one another, because you've obviously have the scale and you've grown it. And I think that with that comes some real good, insightful tips. I see there's a few questions for you if you want to, if you can. I'm happy to also narrate if you want to, or if you can read them directly.
Sure. I'll jump in. So I'll start from the bottom. Yeah, Gustav, learnings about growing the bots. I think it's really, the marketing. I can only say that the marketing and partnerships have really been the way that we've managed to get such numbers.
No, sorry, my voice is going, but sorry to interrupt there, Gavin. I just want to actually say that a lot of organizations we work with, that's the primary challenge. You do put a lot of work in building the bot, getting the content in, etc. But you guys have done really well in getting a lot of users in, but then also maintaining that over the year. And I think specifically that comment you made about, or I think when it's Jonathan who made the comment that some organizations build bots and then they end up, abandoning it because they can't maintain the bot and the traffic, etc. So I think it's super inspiring to see those numbers, and any tips you have about how you to get that. But it sounds to me like a lot of this was non-digital, like offline partnerships.
Yeah, I think that the government partnership has been probably the most important aspect, and the fact they've supported us with a teaching assistant scheme that they're running, where they're onboarding hundreds of thousands of people into that system. So, but we've tried everything in terms of the marketing. You know, we've had obviously a digital marketing and social media campaigns running. We've had partnerships. You know, we've had click-throughs from social media as well as emailers. You know, so that's why I say finding the marketing mix that works for you, I think is super important, and just having, you know, like I say, it's obvious, kind of obvious to say it, but the right content for the right audience, so that when someone lands on your bot, they actually follow through and want to carry on and complete the content. Yeah, okay. Technical challenges. I am not the technical person in my team, but all I can tell you is that servers, we work with messenger people, and their servers did not cope at a certain point with the volume of messages. So that caused us some downtime, caused us some cost negotiations. And yeah, it was an unexpected kind of challenge for us. But hopefully, you know, most kind of partners will be able to manage that kind of scale if you get there. Monthly active user, yeah, that's just an average of when we have someone engaging within the month. So it's just averaged out across the 12 months. But it is a good question as well in terms of what is the, like, can you equate it to the way you would think of that in a normal website, for example? But I guess you just have to be, you know, it can't just be someone who's just visiting the bot and then disappearing. It has to be someone who's engaging properly with your content. And then analytics, I don't know the specificity of this question, but yes, it is possible to obviously capture full analytics. I guess you guys might be covering this at some point in the accelerator about analytics. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gavin. We wish you all the success, and look forward to seeing it scale even broader, and continue sharing those learnings with us. That's really fantastic. Next, we've got Neri Santiela, who is the director and founder of Voices of Venezuela. I'm feeling very honored to have you here, and also inspired because when we met last, you started off with the Accelerator, very similar journey to Jono, where it was still early days, and wow, what a story you have to share. So Neri, over to you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I am Neri, and I found Voices of Venezuela like 3 years ago now, and I am a Venezuelan migrant, and Voices of Venezuela is basically based on many of my experience as a Venezuelan refugee living in another country, where you have to learn a lot of things at once. So why don't we talk about the problem we, as a region, we were facing? 6 million Venezuelan refugees suddenly started flooding the Americas as the world's second largest migration crisis. And in Colombia alone, which is the next slide, Colombia alone has 2.4 million Venezuelan refugees, and 95% of them were having barriers accessing internet, especially information to integrate in their host communities. It is very hard to not fall into very dangerous spaces or not to fall into human trafficking networks when you do not know what is the next step you need to do to become a functional citizen in that host community. So in the next slide, we thought about a solution. And my solution at the time was jump on media creation, to start creating these really engaging resources that were entertaining, were funny. They were, I wanted to create something that people learned but it was people learned something that can change their life, but it was engaging, and also those learnings stayed with them. Why? There was a lot of products or a lot of investment in creating resources that were really not the best fit, because they were reading in legal terms that were very different to what I knew at the time. So, and they were not culturally appropriated media. I couldn't understand most of the stuff, and I was having a really hard time when I migrated. So I decided to change that, and Voices of Venezuela became that space for migrants where they could ask questions. And I saw myself in the necessity of creating a chatbot, because then in this commitment of answering these questions and creating this media, I have a lot of people asking me questions that I couldn't handle myself. So we decided to create a chatbot, taking all these common questions that we were having, and it blew up. We went from having, and we didn't even put any kind of marketing towards it. It was just an experiment that we were doing at the time. And we went from having from having this flow of messages that we couldn't handle, to have like thousands and thousands of messages a day that were that they actually were answered by the bot, and we were able to take care of 80% of the flow. And we have other 2 agents that take care of those questions that are too personal or too specific to be handled by the bot. But yes, we increased our communication another 44 times. And one of the things that happened after this iteration with Chat for Impact is that in the last measurement this year, we saw that most of the comments, because it was the WhatsApp helpline directly also impacted our Facebook page. And the communication there really grew, and we have 54.2% communications over, or the 33 organizations that are working in the same spectrum of Venezuelan or the Venezuelan refugee crisis. And that means that most of the conversations that are happening online are happening through our network. And this is only like 1/3. What is happening on Facebook is only 1/3 of the communications that we're having. The rest is happening on WhatsApp, because it is a safer online space for migrant refugees. So in the next slide, I is going to explain a little bit more. Like, in just weeks after going live, as I said before, we went to have 1,000 messages a day. And this was spread to mouth and mouth alone, because I already had I already have a community. We have around 1 million messages exchanged with the Venezuelan migrant community. We integrate with other communication platforms, such as websites. We automate most of the conversations. So we can prioritize difficult cases of people that are needing like urgent information or urgent help. So the rest that is not that urgent or that specific can go through the bot. And we have right now we have around 40,000 users. And one of the things that we have done with these conversations is that these conversations give us almost near time, almost a real time picture of what is going on in the territories, and we can adapt very quickly, not only content for social media, but also content for the bot. And we can also exchange this information that we are getting from the community to our allies in government, NGOs that are working on the place, because we are like an online presence. And this is the first piece of advice that I'm going to have. Like, you can really use what you're getting in these communications to actually do changes in real life of people, like not only by giving this providing this information, but also many of these conversations will tell you what is your user's life, what is your users going through, how can you help them, and you can ally with other people that have like local presence in real life that can adapt solutions that they are already having there to this information that you're giving them. Because in cases like refugees, we do not approach we tend to not approach organizations because we fear repercussions or retaliation because our migrational status. So many things. There's many things that you can do with our bots besides giving information. You can collect information, you can analyze that information, you can use it to set up certain patterns of behavior. And in the next slide, what are we doing next? Well, next we are expanding our existing media and headlines in increasing data. We are planning to actually expand to another countries. It is my dream to actually build these routes of information through the Americas, and especially right now with the crisis of the Darien Gap. And we are upgrading our chatbot with AI for delivering service and additional information for monitoring purposes. We are right now trying to implement monitoring AI-powered feedback system using data, demographics, locations, intents, service for our helplines and social media to monitor changing needs and gaps and services and accessibility of certain projects that work with us. And we also have detection, our building detection algorithms to identify needs by location, human rights, discrimination, gender-based violence, labor violation, and everything possible that we can't detect with these algorithms. And we want to have an alert system that will provide timely information for crisis management to our stakeholders, as well as alerts to the migrant community. Let's put an example. If I have a rise on the case of cases of gender-based violence, if I see that I have too many consultations on that and I've been having many cases on it, we can report that to our allies that are working on gender-based violence. What are the lessons that I learned through this implementation? Because this has been a long year. We've been using the chatbot for a year and a half. My first lesson will be there is only one first impression. So it is very important that first interaction that people are going to have with their chatbot is engaging. We are living in times where to get the attention of people, it is really difficult, and that first hi, hello needs to be something that it is attractive to them. My second advice will be listen to your user and co-create with them if possible. The reason why Voices of Venezuela has the success that I have had is because it comes from, it was born from the population that has a needs. But if you are not from that population, it could also serve you, because we also understand we have the same problems that people from vulnerable communities in Colombia have. They sometimes don't understand the system because the system is built out on bureaucracy that makes it difficult for you. So listen to your user and co-create with them, because from those exercises you're going to get a lot of information that is going to help you create a really good product. And the third one is define your target audience and use their communication style. I would say Jonathan from Same Same says something that really resonated with me, is that they were experimenting with the translations from different countries, and it is very hard to work with different languages. The same happens with the people that speaks the same language. One of the things I thought when I moved to Colombia is because as we speak Spanish, it was going to be easy for me to understand what I needed to understand, but that was not the case. So understanding that communities have their patterns of languages and use them to your advantage is a must. It's really a must. So I would say just go out there and talk to them and see how do they talk, how do they interact with other people. And then once you have that, do this exercise of imagine what is this set of 5 different people that represent that audience for you, and start resolving this question. What age do they have? What things do they like? How do they communicate? How do they use transport? How do they spend time with their friends? Once you put out that information, you will have your target audience very well defined, and that will help you a lot, and it will take a lot of problems out of you. Create meaningful conversation by adding value. I am a firm believer that everything you have to give to your audience needs to be valuable. There is no room for filler content, definitely. You need to meet with this conversation all about them and what you have to ask them and what you have to give them, so they feel that it was something that was built thinking on them from scratch. Less is more when it comes to explaining complex processes. If you are in the same position I am every day, where you have to explain a really complex process through messages, it could be challenging. But my advice is that less is more. The more simpler you put it, the better people is going to understand it, and take it from a person who has to explain how to obtain a visa in Colombia, which is very complex. Be creative. You can be as creative as you want. Be creative. Use emojis, stickers to reinforce certain patterns of behaviors. For example, I created a set of stickers of myself because I was the main person providing I was the person providing the information on social media, and people really relate to this online persona that I built in this exercise. And then I use the sticker for reinforced patterns of behaviors. For example, one of the stickers that we have there says read carefully. Read carefully, because sometimes your users just don't read. They just focus on the images, they just listen to the notes, but they don't read the text. So I was solving that problem by just adding a sticker to say read carefully, and then people, okay, I have to go back and read the entire text, or push the button, read more. General awareness is not enough. You ask yourself why someone should use your chatbot, and make it attractive and captivating, interactive, and valuable for your user. You have to sit and do this exercise to say why somebody should use my chatbot, and how can I make it interesting for them so they keep coming back. And that has really worked for me. Most of my users, they come back, they take whatever they learn from our chatbots, and they come back because there is other sections that they have not explored. They use the stickers that we create among them, and they give us replies with our own stickers. And then we say, hey, we have this another network that we want you to experience, and they go there and use it too. And they keep coming back to ask their questions because they know that that is a safe environment for them to talk, to ask questions, to interact with the bot and find new things. And that is really the key if you are looking for your users to come back. Like, how can I make this so every time they come back, even though the information is the same, they experience this again as it is something new and innovative. And that was pretty much everything I have to say today. So if anyone have any questions.
Thank you so much, Neri. I think it's again great to see how you've gone through a whole journey. And one thing that particularly stood out to me, you had a very clear problem definition and finding a solution for that. And the way that you bring, the kind of user engagement and content back into the service is really, really great to see. We thank you so much for your time. And again, to Gavin and Jonathan for your time and effort. We really appreciate it. I see there's a question here. If you want to quickly answer that.
Yes, Sasha is asking if there is NLP models right now. No, there is something that is being said a lot in the tech world, that is fake it until you make it. And one of the things I did a thorough kind of investigation on how my users talk. And even though it is a menu, what I did is like mimic organic interactions by knowing how did they communicate. But yes, I am working right now on NLP models to not only understand the questions, but also to have responses that understand that are more accurate with these small language iterations, like because I'm mostly from the linguistic background side, and it is one of the key things that are important on the work that we do. This language that we have built so our users not only understand, but they take the learnings and share it with other people. And we want to implement that on the bot, and we are working on those NLP models. We don't have them ready yet, but we are working on it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I see there's a few questions more to the generic group of the alumni. I'm going to suggest that we come back to you all in the Slack channel. That questions are particular around different engagement performance, when there's a personified service versus more of a general digified persona. So we're going to pause that question to get back to you on, just looking at time as well. Again, thank you so much to Neri, Jonathan, and Gavin for your time and your effort. We really, really appreciate it, and wish you all the best of luck. Now, moving on to a quick product overview. Some of you might be familiar with Turn already, and some of you, this is all brand new. So Manish will be taking us just quickly on some of the main key things that you can do with Turn. Most of you are now already onboarded or onboarding in the process, and this is what you will be using to build your chatbot. So if you already have a service, you can continue building and using the features of Turn to enhance your product as part of this accelerator. And if you've not, and you're starting brand new, this will be a quick intro on how to use Turn. All of the videos, all of the content will be shared later. So it will just be a quick overview for this. So don't worry if it is, you need more time. We also have weekly training sessions. So if you feel like you want to deep dive into a particular feature, we will be doing it throughout the accelerator. Plus there's the weekly trainings. And of course, there is the office hours. So over to you, Manish, and then we'll finish up with the homework for the rest of the week.
Thanks, Lisa. Hello everyone, this is Manish Manohar. I am Community Manager at Turn. I'm excited to be here among all of you. In this section, I will cover a very quick overview of what can be done inside Turn. Let's get started. In this section, we'll talk about three different things. One is how to create engaging content. That includes how to build maybe a content with buttons, lists, images, and other media elements. Then we'll talk about how to automate your conversations. And lastly, we'll talk about how to have one-on-one conversation with your users. Next slide, please. So this is how Turn looks like when you log into Turn. This is the interface that you will see. On the left-hand panel, you'll see all the menu items, and in the middle, you'll see all these boxes. These boxes are called collections. Collections are basically the way to manage chats. You can make your own collections, delete them, and you can customize these collections as well from the search window on the top. Next slide, please. So coming back to content, these are the different content types that you can add inside WhatsApp. You can have a text message, you can have a media message with text, you can have button messages. These are clickable buttons, and then you can have list messages, and then there's a special kind of messages called templated messages. We'll talk about templated messages later on in maybe office hours or in the later sessions. We'll talk about a little bit of how to create those messages now. So in order to create content, be it a media content or the text content, you have to click on content section, and then you add that content. In this GIF, you'll see it asks for the language, it asks for the title of the content and the content body, and there's an option to add or upload any attachments that you might have. And that's how we add content inside Turn. It's super easy. Once you start building it, it will be like second nature to you. Then you can also have like interactive content that we discussed earlier. You can have like the buttons inside content, and this is how you create button messages. Like the text messages, you can have like language, and then the title of the message, and then the message body, and then you have to define little buttons that you want to add inside your content. On the right hand side, you will see the preview that the user will see when this message was sent to the will be sent to the user. So this is how we add interactive content. There's another type of interactive content, which is lists content. We'll talk about that in our separate session, which is scheduled next week. I know I'm going pretty fast here, but yeah, I know we have office hours and a lot of training session. We'll cover most of these things in depth in those sessions as well. So once we have like the content ready inside Turn, we have to automate these the conversations. There are three ways to do it inside Turn. We can have like the keyword based automation, wherein there's a keyword and there's a content, and then you connect keyword with your content element. Then you can have like conversational flows. These are basically essential when you want to collect data from the user or you want to build surveys. These are done using something called as threads inside Turn. Similarly, if you're looking for more complex conversational flows, there is a feature inside Turn that we'll talk about in details again in the next session that is called build and stacks. We'll see how to create those stacks and create some complex automation flows inside Turns using that. Yeah, and this is around how we build the simple keyword-based automation. We use something called as triggers and actions inside Turn. So in this GIF, you will see it asks for the trigger. The trigger could be when you receive a message from the user, and then you can also define an action, whether you want to send a message to the user when you receive a message, say hello from the user, or you want to update a contact. So there could be multiple triggers that would initiate an automation, and there could be different actions that you can do inside Turn with that trigger. Next slide, please. Similar to like I said, we can also build conversational flows. You can see here we can use something called as threads. Threads are basically like high performance flows that we can build to collect data from the user, or maybe register a user. On the left hand side, you can see that we are defining a trigger. Trigger is like when we receive a message, say register, from the user, and then we are defining what should happen next when we receive a trigger. In this case, we are asking a question to the user, what is the name, and then we are asking another question about the country, and so on and so forth. Then we add the last thank you message when we receive all the data from the user. And that's how we build a simple thread. You can see on the right hand section of this screen, you will see the preview of the conversation that you will have with this thread. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Now that we also have a feature called playbooks. Playbooks are basically these are the threads and stacks that all the community members have built and shared with everyone. Playbooks, you will find the playbook section on the left hand side menu in the dashboard, and if you click there and if you click on the community playbooks, you will see all the threads that were published by the community. In this case, it's WHO privacy policy template. You can use these templates directly into your service. You can download them and activate them and start using them as soon as possible. So it's like a ready-made template that you can edit and then use it, and you don't have to create the whole lot of flows inside thread from scratch. We do have playbooks for threads, and we do have playbooks for stacks. We are populating, our community is populating more of these playbooks so that you can get started as soon as possible. Next slide, please. And one of the key features that we have is to have one-on-one chats with your users. So if you go inside the collections that we discussed earlier and go inside all conversation, you can actually chat with the user to whatever complex questions that you want to solve. You can directly chat with your users and assign these conversations to different coaches maybe in your team. And this is basically the typical case wherein you want to have like a help desk operator in the backend, and you don't want to handle all the complex issues via stacks or automations. So when you have like a coaches or the guides in the backend, you can use this feature. Next slide, please. Then we have the insight section where you can get answers to the questions such as how many users you are interacting with, how many messages that you have sent, and so on and so forth. All the insights related stuff will be available in this section. Can you go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Yeah, so also in the settings section in the bottom, you will see if you want to edit your profile, you can do it directly from the settings section, or if you want to add webhooks or APIs, these are like external systems. If you want to integrate those external systems, this is a place that you will do that. You can generate tokens, you can add webhooks so that you can integrate your system with external systems. Next slide, please. Yeah, so you can also explore our APIs. We'll share these. You can access our documentation via this link. We'll share this link with the presentation later on. And yeah, you can have an entire service at your end as well. Or if you want to maybe incorporate some machine learning models, you can use our APIs. If you want to integrate with CRMs, you can use our APIs. So there's a lot that we can do, but we'll dig deeper into everything that we have discussed in the office hours and in the later sessions that we'll be having. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Manish. Wow, that is like what you call a proper run through of a product in less than 10 minutes. That is very impressive. You definitely product fit. I know that's a lot of information to take on, but as Manish mentioned, We are there to support you. So there are the weekly training sessions you can attend. They're recurring and they're continuous. So even after the accelerator, you get stuck, you can just attend one of those. You can also invite your team member to those. And then there's the office hour, which then brings me to summing up today's session with our weekly assignment. The most important thing that I could ask of you today is to book your office hours. For no other reason is that all these wonderful questions that we've seen in the chat window will be the place to get it answered by our product and engineering team, and Manish and the team as well. So you all should have access to the schedule to book it. Also make sure that you add your questions in there. It just helps us to prepare better and so that we can have our time together optimized. The second task that we shared with you last week, and that is the asset requirements, particularly the communication pieces. We are in the process of prepping the press release to go out. We will share it with all of you as well. But part of that asset requirements are your logos, are your service names, all of this information. Corolla has also reached out to all of you. If you get stuck, let us know, but that is really going to be helping us to help you build a really good case study on the service that you will be building. Then your homework for this week coming is to watch the demos from last year. I suggest take a cup of tea or coffee and just watch them from one end instead of your Netflix series, just one from the beginning to end. And it will be a really good example of what we are going to expect of you and how different organizations solve their problems in different ways. Don't get too worried about the technical bits. That's why we're here to help you. But that is really good inspiration to watch. And then in preparation for next week's session, start thinking about the problem you're trying to solve. You'll heard from Jonathan, Gavin, and Neri. All of them had a very clear problem that they tried to solve with the WhatsApp service. It's sometimes very tempting to want to do everything in the one go. For the purpose of the accelerator, we're focusing on that one problem you're trying to solve. We'll have Pippa, who is one of our co-founders and also head of product. We'll be talking through how to design for WhatsApp to have impact. So that's going to be a really helpful time for next week. But just recapping, office hours, get in there. You can also get the best slots if you do it quickly. Make sure that your participant requirements documentation is completed. Watch those videos, think about the problem, and then we will see you on Slack. If there's any questions, please let me know. You can contact me via email or on the Slack channel. There's also always support available, as I mentioned. We've got our office